who we are. Why were you looking for us? How did you know how to find us? That's a lot of firsts, Fiona said with a smile. I think you Baudelaires are forgetting that your exploits haven't exactly been a secret. Nearly every day there's been a story about you in one of the most popular newspapers. The Daily Punctilio, Violet asked. I hope you haven't been believing the dreadful lies they've been printing about us. Of course not, Fiona said. But even the most ridiculous of stories can contain a grain of truth. The Daily Punctilio said that you'd murdered a man in the village of Foul Devotees and then set fires at Heimlich Hospital and Caligari Carnival. We knew, of course, that you hadn't committed these crimes, but we could tell that you had been there. My stepfather and I figured that you'd found the secret stain on Madame Lulu's map and were headed for the VFD headquarters. Klaus gasped. You know about Madame Lulu, he said, and the coded stain? My stepfather taught that code to Madame Lulu, Fiona explained, a long time ago, when they were both young. Well, we heard about the destruction of the headquarters, so we assumed that you'd be heading back down the mountain, so I set a course for the Queequeg to journey up the stricken stream. You travelled all the way up here, Klaus said, just to find us. Fiona looked down. Well, no, she said. You weren't the only thing at VFT headquarters. One of our volunteer factual dispatches told us that the Sugar Bowl was there as well. Deaf in fact? Sonny asked. What are volunteer factual dispatches exactly? Violet translated. They're a way of sharing information, Fiona said. It's difficult for volunteers to meet up with one another, so when they unlock a mystery, they can write it in a telegram. That way important information gets circulated, and before long our commonplace books will be full of information we can use to defeat our enemies. A commonplace book is a... We know what a commonplace book is, Klaus said, and removed his dark blue notebook from his pocket. I've been keeping one myself. Fiona smiled and drummed her gloved fingers on the cover of Klaus's book. I should have known, she said. If your sisters want to start books themselves, we should have a few spares. Everything's in our supply room. So are we going up to the ruins of the headquarters? Violet asked. To get the sugar bowl? We didn't see it there. We think someone threw it out the window, Fiona answered, when the fire began. If they threw the sugar bowl from the kitchen, it would have landed in the stricken stream and been carried by the water cycle all the way down the mountains. We were seeing if it could be found at the bottom of the stream when we happened upon you three. The stream probably carried it much further than this, Klaus said thoughtfully. I think so too, Fiona agreed. I'm hoping that you can discover its location by studying my stepfather's tidal charts. I can't make head or tail of them. I'll show you how to read them, Klaus said. It's not difficult. That's what frightens me, Fiona said. If those charts aren't difficult to read, then Count Olaf might have a chance of finding the sugar bowl before we do. My stepfather says that if the sugar bowl falls into his hands, then all of the efforts of all of the volunteers will be for naught. The Baudelaires nodded, and the four children made their way down the corridor in silence. For naught is simply a fancy way of saying for nothing, and it doesn't matter which phrase you use, for they are both equally difficult to admit. Later this afternoon, for instance, I will enter a large room full of sand, and if I do not find the test tube I am looking for, it will be difficult to admit that I have sifted through all that sand for nothing. If you insist on finishing this book, you will find it difficult to admit, between bouts of weeping, that you have read this story for naught, and that it would have been better to page through tedious descriptions of the water cycle. And the Baudelaires did not want to find themselves admitting that all of their troubles had been for naught, that all their adventures meant nothing, and that their entire lives were naught and nothing if Count Olaf managed to find this crucial sugar bowl before they did. The three siblings followed Fiona down the dim corridor and hoped that their time aboard the Queequeg would not be another terrifying journey, ending in more disappointment, disillusionment, and despair. For the moment, however, their journey ended at a small door, where Fiona stopped and turned to face the Baudelaires. "This is our supply room," she said. "Inside, you'll find uniforms for the three of you, although even our smallest size might be too big for Sunny." "Pinstripe," Sunny said. She meant something like, "Don't worry, I'm used to ill-fitting clothing," and her siblings were quick to translate. "You'll need diving helmets too," Fiona said. "This is an old submarine and it could spring a leak. If the leak is serious, the pressure of the water could cause the walls of the Queequeg to collapse, filling all these rooms and corridors with water. The oxygen systems contained in the...
for the lazarusvector yet? If you do, best head to a crafting station. Then head back to Langford's lab and put the whole witch's brew in the mister. That should clear this fog right up."
Helmets enable you to breathe underwater, for a short time anyway. "Your stepfather said that the helmets would be too big for Sunny, and that she'd have to curl up inside one," Violet said. "Is that safe?" "Safe, but uncomfortable," Fiona said, "like everything else on the Queequeg. This submarine used to be in wonderful shape, but without anyone who knows about mechanics, it's not quite up to its former glory. Many of the rooms are flooded, so I'm sorry to say that we'll be sleeping in very tight quarters. I hope you like bunk beds." "We've slept on worse," Klaus said. "So I hear," Fiona replied. "I read a description of the orphan shaft at Prufrock Preparatory School. That sounded terrible." "So you knew about us even then?" Violet asked. "Why didn't you find us sooner?" Fiona sighed. "We knew about you," she said. "Every day I would read terrible stories in the newspaper, but my stepfather said we couldn't do anything about all the treachery those stories contained." "Why not?" Klaus asked. "He said your troubles were too enormous," she replied.
"From the sounds of that you invented, I'm guessing you're the proud papa of a brand new lazarusvector. Now drop the vector into a gadget called Central Misting Control. Then we'll be cooking with gas." Listen, a damn take there with crank. How long is it going to take?
It seems Julie's death didn't provide a clear enough lesson to you. Perhaps this will suffice.
Brian's got your number. No deal Hughie says in company. Best to head back to the lab entrance and seal her up. Might be the only way to keep the splicers out.
Where are you going?
I sent you a wee package through the pneumo. Not much, but every little bit counts. What are you waiting for, Boyle? Brian's lads are on their way. Get the lab entrance sealed. Did you get that door closed? Good. That should buy some time.
Next up, good.
Ready!
long? You're so resistant to the traditional methods of separating a man from his soul. You're not CIA, are you? You belong to Atlas, the one roach I can't seem to exterminate. Don't worry. I just need time to find the proper poison.
You're almost there. The Spirit of Ryan is up on ahead. Ryan's handed the keys to Fort Frolic over to a guy named Sander Cohen. Cohen's an artist, says some. He's a Section 8, says I. I've seen all kinds of cutthroats, freaks, and hard cases in my life. Cohen, he's a real lunatic. A guy from the psychopath. So, better luck next time. Look at the bright side. Maybe you'll be quick and painless. Believe me when I tell you, I wouldn't want to be in your shoes. Perhaps in a past life you did something terrible to somebody.